I went to South Africa, the cheapest country for aviation, to get my pilot's license. Then I went to Australia and bought a plane so I can fly to Papua New Guinea to find the Tasmanian tiger. It is my firm belief the Tasmanian tiger is alive. I know where it is at, and I can prove it. For those who don't know the thylacine, it is the most famous recently extinct animal. It lived in the ancient continent of Sahul, where it stretched from Australia to Tasmania, but it recently lived in another place in Sahul not a lot of people know about. The least biologically explored place on the planet, Papua New Guinea. This is one of essentially two places in the world you can really still find uncontacted tribes at, except unlike the Amazonian ones, they're cannibals here. The reason it is so unexplored is it isn't just impenetrable jungle, it's mountainous jungle with winding rivers, it has glaciers, it's higher than the Alps. The first time Westerners went into the interior, it was the 1930s. Gold miners led the first expedition, and they couldn't believe what they found. 1 million uncontacted cannibals, possibly 2 million. In an even more special place, in a valley surrounded by the mountains, in 1938, in almost the 40s, a flying boat research vessel took off and landed in a lake at 11,000 feet. They almost all died on landing, but after, they found something they weren't expecting, 100,000 more uncontacted people in the highlands. This is the first contact footage, and then they named it Balaam Valley. Besides Greenland, this is the largest island in the world, the third largest rainforest. It's so big, it's basically the size of Central Europe. 1,000 languages are spoken here, 15% of spoken languages globally. And that's because it's so mountainous. You have a tribe living 1 mile away from another tribe. They don't speak to each other. They have their own linguistically different languages. They don't even know each other exist, which means every valley and mountain contains its own ecological niche, making it one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. This is where tree kangaroos live. They're small, colorful kangaroos that live in the trees like monkeys, but they're kangaroos. There's like 20 species of them, and they can be hunted by tree crocodiles. Crocodile monitors are the second largest monitor lizard in the world, except they're the longest. They can get over 10 feet, probably 13 feet long, except they live in the trees. There's the birds of paradise, some of the single most sexually dimorphic species on the planet. Birds that are poisonous to touch. Couscous, wallabies, patamelons, egg-laying mammals, even the people. Most of us have 1-2% Neanderthal DNA. Papuans have up to 6% DNA of a different hominid, the Denisovans. And they have Neanderthal DNA on top of that, taking the maximum of both of those, making some of them almost 10% non-Homo sapien. And they're alive today. Except when you go to the highlands, they have even more Denisovan DNA. But there's one thing about this place I find more fascinating than anything else by far. Some of the most remote people living in the world. You're the only white person they've ever seen. They don't have internet access, have multiple names for, and can describe and point out on a picture a striped, orange, large-mouthed dog that's active at dusk and dawn and is not like the other dogs, the thylacine. Now, misidentification is a huge problem with eyewitness testimonies, except the thylacine isn't just a normal animal. It is one of the most unique animals we have officially lost to science. It looks like a dog, but it can open its mouth nearly 90 degrees, except it's not a dog, it's a marsupial. Marsupials split from mammals in the Jurassic, 100 million years before T-Rex evolved, so very, very not related to canines. It's more related to kangaroos, and it can even use its stiff tail to stand upright with its hind legs to stand or bounce like a kangaroo. And its joeys are kept in a pouch facing backwards, and it's only active in twilight. This is an already really rare animal because it's solitary and shy, And this is why it's the most famous recently extinct animal in the world, because this isn't a normal animal. This is more like a mythical beast. And now in this kangaroo jungle no one knows about, you have multiple naked people telling you they know of a striped largemouth dog that lives in the least biologically explored place on the planet, where the Tasmanian tiger used to officially live. Actually, it's not just naked people, it's the Indonesian government too. This is not Papua New Guinea. The entire island is mistakenly called Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea is actually the country in the eastern side of New Guinea, while the west is controlled by Indonesia and is the less explored half. Now, Australia and Tasmania have thousands of thylacine sightings. However, I firmly don't believe it's possible for it to still be alive there. While these places, they are extremely remote, they have modern infrastructure. Now you can set up camera traps, there's roadkill, not to mention hundreds of people have looked for the thylacine here. And everyone knows what the thylacine is. So when you see a sick fox limping, you have grandmas saying like, I just saw a thylacine. So the distribution of sightings is everywhere, which is indicative they're false. But in New Guinea, no one knows what the thylacine is. No one has looked for it, and the distribution of sightings only centers on one place, one of the least explored places on the planet, and the only place in the world that can still sustain a thylacine population, the highlands. Now, nearby Balaam Valley, the only biological survey that has ever taken place in the entirety of the highlands was in 1996. It lasted a few weeks and then they all got kidnapped. The following year, the government announces Tasmanian tigers were attacking village livestock. In Irian Jaya, in the Star Mountains, they offer a reward to anyone that can capture one alive. This information is coming from the Regency official of the government, and no one investigates it. It's too dangerous. But it's not just the government official reporting this. At the same time as that report, an Indonesian news agency announces villagers that have been seeing thylacines foraging for food at night on a mountain. The Washington Post reports on it and says the same thing, that villagers had already killed one, sold it to be eaten. Simultaneously, a researcher confesses he saw thylacine footprints in the same mountain in the snow. Previous to this, missionaries had been reporting seeing thylacines in the higher, more elevated, remote parts of the highlands, where missionaries are the only outsiders that exist. An Austrian man interested in anthropology visits multiple villages. He brings with him pictures of animals, some that they know and some of the outside world. But one time, he goes to a village higher up and he shows his pictures, and they point out on a letter an Australian stamp of the thylacine and start mimicking how it stands upright in the tall grass to see. He does subsequent trips to the region, and none of the lowlanders can recognize a thylacine, but the village in the highlands consistently can. A pilot talks to villages in the lowlands, and no one can recognize the thylacine until he gets a village familiar with it in the highlands. A botanist on an expedition on a mountain hears a strange screech and is told by the porters he's accompanied by that it is an orange striped dog that's rare and sacred. And they repeat twice that this is not a normal dog. And there's more sightings like these. And remarkably, all of the accounts are consistent. Normally, striped dog with a large mouth or sometimes with a stiff tail. That's unlike a dog's tail, which is a defining visual characteristic of a thylacine because their tails don't sway or wag like a canine's do, which makes their gait look weird when they walk. And also very common is saying they sleep in caves, which is correct. Even more common is reports saying that they're active at night or twilight, which is another distinction from canines and is correct. But most importantly, almost all accounts mention that they live high, like very high, usually over 10,000 feet. Over 10,000 feet, farming becomes impossible, so human habitation becomes impossible. The trees stop, and now it's perfect thylacine habitat. Not that long ago, in the 60s, in Papua New Guinea, thylacine fossils were found, except the highlands are at a lower elevation here, which allows human settlement, and then presumably that's why they went extinct in Papua New Guinea. But in Indonesian New Guinea, the elevation is much higher and the people can't live there. This is the only place in the world the thylacine almost certainly used to exist. All of its prey has survived into the modern era. Humans, the only confirmed reason it went extinct everywhere else, have never lived here, and it's almost entirely, completely unexplored. I mean, on my aeronautical map, it says incomplete. And now all sides of this mountain range are getting thylacine sightings. There's a jungle dog, the New Guinea singing dog. Instead of barking, it sings. It was thought to be extinct in the wild for 40 years until in 2016 it was found to still be alive in healthy populations. In our interest, 13,000 feet up, which proves that number one, a medium-sized carnivore has enough food to survive, and number two, a dog living in broad daylight in packs evolved to be friendly to humans, stayed undetected for that long. And the biologist who rediscovered this dog met someone he claimed reliable that knew of the thylacine. This animal is built for stealth. It's solitary, so it's an already rare animal known to be elusive and shy like a mountain lion. And we have a report from the government of it being in the highlands with villagers that were still eating people in the 70s that have no internet access and can describe the thylacine, a very unique animal to describe nearly perfectly. And they have multiple names for this creature. The Dobsegna, the ancient steppe dog, the titi, and none of the lowlanders can describe this animal, which is what we would expect. But in the lowlands, locals actually had a name for a different animal, an extinct bird that they'd rarely see. And then in 2022, researchers actually found it. In the 2000s, a helicopter was launched to a mountain not even the indigenous Papuans had been. No human being ever. And they found new species of birds, frogs, the world's largest rat, even a new species of wallaby. Here in 2023, just 3 years ago, in a mountain touching the largest city in West Papua, researchers find a new egg-laying mammal, terrestrial shrimp, which are shrimp that live on land and trees. 2 new Lazarus species were announced just this month. So now these people act sort of as a control group because they're so cut off from the outside world, it makes it very implausible for them to know about this animal and lie about it. So if these people can accurately describe this animal, especially with details that aren't heavily circulated in the media, which is what we have, the thylacine is literally probably alive. But of course, we only hear secondhand testimonies from missionaries and pilots talking to these people. So why not go ask yourself? But there's a few problems with that. It was my opinion that relying on locals to get deep into the jungle is extremely risky. Cassowaries, the dinosaur bird, the second largest bird, the most dangerous on the planet, walk through the jungle here, and if they want to, they'll kill you. Saltwater crocodiles, the largest and most aggressive carnivore that hunts humans, is here. This is also right next to Australia, so it has the highest concentration of highly venomous snakes in the world. One species is called the common death adder. There's also the worst jungle diseases, multiple volcanoes, but the real reason it's not really been explored is the separatist jungle guerrillas that have existed since the start of modern New Guinea. And the terrain makes roads nearly impossible, so the only infrastructure in the highlands is airstrips. Airstrips that can have a slope of well over 20 degrees and are usually handmade. And there's hundreds of them. So I did something crazy. Really crazy. I just full sended it. I went to South Africa, the cheapest country for aviation, to a city called Port Elizabeth, to learn how to fly a plane. And after 6 months of studying meteorology, physics, radio communications, law, navigation, and more, and flying in windy conditions. After 45 flight hours, I got my pilot's license. Then I went to Australia to buy a plane so I can fly myself to the villages in the highlands. I realized if I could fly to them, I could test the locals with a book test. I could show them pictures of native animals and see if they recognize them. Then I can show them pictures of non-native animals to see if they're lying to me. Lastly, I can show them the thylacine. And a plane also serves as a mobile base camp, a way to get supplies, a backup plan in an emergency. But even if you find a village familiar with the thylacine, the terrain is still so extreme. But I realized a drone can bypass the terrain. So I bought a thermal drone. However, a drone needs a substantial amount of power for repeated use still. So I found portable solar panels that are lightweight. And now I can search after sunset even. These airstrips are some of the smallest in the world, but they're still meant for larger aircraft carrying cargo. So even as an amateur aviator, with my small bush plane with suspension, tires for short landings, an oversized engine that produces more lift than needed, that can take car gasoline as fuel if needed, with a transponder that lets me go anonymous if I don't want the government knowing my location. And with Microsoft Flight Simulator, you can practice your exact itinerary of airstrips hundreds of times, and all these other little innovative things to make it safer. This is the runway. There's my plane right there, and this is a sand runway, which is perfect for practicing those New Guinea landings. And I was going through some stuff at the time, some pretty tough stuff, and I arrogantly assumed I could push past it. And in Australia, I crashed my motorcycle because of it. So I have just crashed my motorcycle in Australia. I think it was a little too crazy. The weather can look clear on takeoff, and then a storm starts to develop faster than your aircraft can go, and boom, you're caught in a storm. It's Icarus. It was literally possible I would have flown too high, higher than my aircraft could exceed. So it became quickly apparent to me that it was irresponsible for me to fly a plane. So I canceled all my plans. But then I found out something. I went all in because, I'm skeptical. I wasn't sure if the thylacine was alive, but me flying my yellow plane in the New Guinea mountains looking for an extinct animal, that was already successful. But then I got new information that made me realize the thylacine is almost 100% alive. And I know exactly where, and I went.